Welcome to An Awful World, but not awful like you think.
This is the show where we discuss whether we would have discovered important advances in a world exclusively full of Haylies and Libbys. I'm Haylie.
And I'm Libby. Welcome back to An Awful World. Season 2.
Ooh, ooh.
The redux. No, I'm kidding. We're not doing any redos. Well, thanks for joining us. It's been a minute, perhaps, since you stepped into your hot tub spaceship and jumped with us to An Awful World. What is An Awful World? It's a world exclusively full of Haylies and Libbys. What would we figure out? I don't know. You'll have to tune into season 1 to remember. No, I'm kidding. We're going to do a recap
Yes,
of all the things that we talked about in season 1 before we jump into season 2. So we know that we have some things going on in An Awful World. Some things perhaps not. I need a reminder, I think, of some of the things that I think we said yes we would have in An Awful World.
Yeah. So looking back, we had way more yeses than no's.
We're confident. All
right. Yeah, we have been crushing it.
Interesting. Wow.
The world is just like really chugging along. We're making so much progress.
Great.
Yes. We have fire. We have wheels.
Okay.
We have languages and domestication. We also have agriculture and irrigation. We're farming. There's food. Wonderful.
We've got money.
But we're not so sure on magnets.
No, lots of sciencey things, not super sure on.
No.
Also, some interesting, like last season, we didn't do a ton of like social topics, but royalty is one that we discussed. And that's the only one that I feel like we have a hard and fast no on.
Yes.
Which I think is so funny.
Well, other things are like more inventions, like calendars and timekeeping, which I mean they're inventions, but they're kind of not. But like we would just, there's systems and we
would have a system.
Yeah, but it would probably not be this system.
Right. Yeah, I feel confident about a lot of those things.
Yeah.
If you, revisit some of our season 1 episodes, I feel like that's the thing that echoes throughout them is like, yeah, we'd probably come up with this, but it's not going to look at all like it looks in this regular boring world that we're in. We're going to have glitter money.
That's right.
And we're going to have the Hall of Candles where we keep time. And it's just going to look different and better, in my opinion.
I agree.
So, that's kind of at least somewhat of a recap of some of the things we discussed last season.
Yes. This
season, we're getting off to kind of a fun topic. But before we address any of that, we do have some housekeeping that we need to go over. It's season 2. Y'all, we are back. It's cold outside. We're sad. No, I'm kidding. Mostly.
I mean, not really kidding.
What you didn't see was Haley's little like head shake. Like, not kidding. So since we have season 2 now, we have started a Patreon. Yay! If you don't know what a Patreon is, it is basically a way for you listeners to support your favorite content creators. Hopefully we top the list of your favorite content creators. So you can check us out at patreon.com/An Awful World Podcast. And remember, that's AWFHAL, as in a world full of Haylies and Libbys. So An Awful World Podcast, Patreon, we do have 3 tiers, kind of exciting. So some fun, different things included in each one. Tier 1, you are a friend of the show, friend of the podcast. That is where we will give you a shout out on the podcast if you subscribe to that tier. Tier 2 is An Awful Fangirl, where you will also get a shout out and an exclusive Awful World sticker that we're very excited about. Put that on your water bottle, your laptop, your phone, your iPad, your Kindle, whatever you want.
Whatever you're feeling.
Yeah, show us off to this regular world and then tell people about An Awful World and how cool it is. And then also you can submit topics that you'd like for us to talk about in episodes. You want to hear what is going on in An Awful World with something specific. You can let us know and we will potentially cover the topic you've requested. And then our third tier is An Awful Aficionado. The Awful Aficionado gets everything that's included in the first 2 tiers. Plus, we will send you a handwritten thank you note. And most importantly, you will get early access to the podcast so you can hear it before everybody else does. So you'll know. You'll be way ahead of what's going on in An Awful World, as opposed to the other fans and what they won't know until the next day. So that, again, is our Patreon. So patreon.com/An Awful World podcast. Check us out there and hopefully, give us some support for this season 2 so we can keep the podcast going.
Yeah.
So with that, are we ready?
Yeah.
I think we're ready to jump. I'm so excited about this topic.
Me too.
So today, season 2, episode 1, we are discussing cults. And you're hearing this and you're like, wait, we're in Indianapolis. Did they say Colts? No.
Yes. It's the Indianapolis Colts, the football team.
Yes.
Could we create that in An Awful World?
No, because we would never create something so garbage.
No.
That is just a topic for another time. I have strong feelings about the Indianapolis Colts organization and what's going on there right now. But we're not going to talk about that in this podcast.
Thank God, because I don't know sports.
Yes, Haley's eyes would glaze over, but maybe at some point we'll talk about sports. I don't know what's coming up in this season. No. So anyway, we're talking about cults, CULTS, cults.
Yes.
Oh my God, what a topic.
And we have such strong feelings.
We do. And we also have, I feel like, more knowledge than maybe like the average person on this topic.
We love a good cult documentary.
Oh my God, I'll always be up on the HBO. I'm sorry, Max.
Yes.
Looking at the documentaries, watching them, being like, this is some crazy shit. So let's get into it.
Yes.
Do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Okay. Well, first things first. What is a cult?
Great question.
And a cult is a group of people who share extreme beliefs and practices and are often led by a charismatic figure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Now, okay, one thing I would like to say is what some people consider a charismatic figure, I do not agree with.
Well,
and I do not see the appeal to most of these people.
So that's what I think I was going to say, is that I think that you're taking the word charismatic to have a positive connotation. I think that these people are often very charismatic, just maybe not always in a good way. You know what I mean? Like they are very like larger than life figures, but like weird.
Yes, but most of the cult leaders that I have seen or people who I believe to be cult leaders, and some people are like, no, they're not. I won't say who.
Can't wait to get into that.
But I am just like, I could literally never see their face again. I could never hear their voice again. Yes. I don't understand how anybody is like, yeah, that person is somebody who I want to listen to and believe and all of these things. I'm like, that is somebody who I could lock them in a closet for the rest of time and be super okay with it.
I get that. We'll get more into that on my opinions on that. Because I have a very specific opinion about these leaders and the followers, I guess, via the leaders, that I will share just based on all of my knowledge about cults. And I don't know, I feel like I have like a minor in cults. You know what I mean? Like I've watched so many things.
That would be a cool degree.
It would be, wouldn't it?
I wonder if that's a thing.
Probably not. My guess is that's more of like a sociology thing.
Probably.
So cults, though, were really not like a recognized thing until like the 30s, the 1930s.
Right.
As we're approaching the 2030s, which makes me want to barf. But anyway, does that mean that there weren't cults pre-1930s? No. It's just a thing that we didn't really define until it became a topic of like sociological study.
Well, and even then, it's still kind of hard to define like what is a cult and what's not.
For sure.
Because, so first of all, the word cult comes from a French word that just means worship.
I know. I noticed that. And I was like, that's so interesting because it has developed such a negative connotation over time.
Yes. And that is the big thing is like, and a lot of them they don't have to deal with religious beliefs, but a lot of them do. And there's like some scholars who say that there is no general consensus about what differentiates a cult from another religious group.
Yes.
Which I wrote down, boom, because specifically because in our religion episode, I said, don't you ever feel like a lot of religions resemble cults and are cults? And because they 100% can be. Not all of them, but like a lot of times they get just like a little out of control. And you're like, whoa, we are in cult territory.
So for me, the differential, I'm going to disagree with these people that there is no differential between, just a regular religion, as it were, and a cult. For me, the big difference is the amount of control the leader has over the people. And so I actually wrote down somewhere, I think I put some funny things. Yes, I did. I said my thoughts. So like anytime that I feel like there's like a contract or like you can't leave or you'll be shunned by the group, or something like that, if you're isolated from your family, something like that, then I think you're in a cult. Like,
absolutely.
Most religions are like, we want you, we welcome you, but if you decide not to be a part of it, okay, I'm going to move on. So, I mean, granted, and I think it should also be clarified that there are subsects of religions that are cults.
Yes.
Right?
Well, and there are religions that are now considered like full-fledged religions, but started and people were like, that's a cult.
That's a cult, yeah.
Like, apparently, the Mormon Church, they were originally a cult that is now legally recognized as a religion.
100%. So I've felt this way about the Mormon Church for quite some time.
Same.
And I don't, I'm not here to denigrate the Mormon Church and whatever. This is just my thoughts on them. So the Mormon Church started in like maybe the early like 19th century by a guy named Joseph Smith, who says that he discovered these scrolls in upstate New York here in North America. That's really funny to me because Jesus, who is somewhat included in the Mormon Church,
right,
never walked on this continent.
No.
That I can assure you.
Right.
He was definitely in the Middle East and only in the Middle East, whether or not any religion that includes Jesus wants to recognize that.
Right.
But the thing about the Mormon Church is, it starts in upstate New York and then they kind of get pushed to like Illinois and then they just keep getting kicked out of like town after town. And that's why they end up all the way out west. Yes, because they just kept getting like pushed and pushed and pushed. Anyway, I think I was just telling you this the other day that I know that if you go to like an LDS church, which is a Mormon church, they do not want to let you in. Like they're very like protective of their culture and whatever, which I think is really strange because usually churches are like welcoming places that like want people to come in and I'm not talking about like you're just like Joe Schmo, like, or you're like homeless trying to come into the church. I mean, just like if I walked up to an LDS church, they would be like, no, you can't come in. You can't be in our service. You can't. No, we don't want that. And they also think that only 144,000 people are going to get into heaven. I'd say we've probably met that quota.
Yeah, probably. So at this point, like, do whatever the hell you want, I guess.
Right. Like humans have been around for, thousands of years.
But it also it works because there are still active members of the Mormon Church.
Huge. I mean, that's a huge religion.
Yes. Well, and what's so funny is it's like there's no one formula that cults follow. Because think about Scientology, another religion that I wholeheartedly believe is a cult.
It's a cult.
And, but they're using the exact opposite tactics. They will do whatever they can to trick you to come into their building.
Absolutely.
Like I saw this TikTok one time of this poor girl and she was like, wow, the fact that I am not in a cult right now is like so amazing because I have been tricked no less than 3 times into going into the Scientology building.
What?
Because they kept because they just stand out on the street and then they'll be like, hey, do you want to come watch this movie before it's released to the public? And she's like, absolutely. And then they're like, hey, do all this Scientology stuff. And she's like, oh, shit.
Hold these e-meters.
Yeah.
And then pay us $1,000.
Exactly. But so she's like, I have been tricked 3 times.
Yeah.
And every single time I fall for it and go into their building.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, no, I have made
That's
a
hilarious.
mistake.
Which I will say. So like if you live in Indianapolis or you're around Indianapolis, there are people on every corner who are actually members of the Mormon Church. You'll see them, with these like things of pamphlets set up. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't know that they're members of the Mormon Church until you approach it and you can look at the papers, or the brochures or whatever. But I just think that's so interesting that they do that. But like, I am confident that if you walked up to a Mormon church, I know where there's one like in the town that I grew up in. And I sincerely doubt that they would let me come in even just to sit and listen for a minute. But Scientology, God, what another topic.
I know.
And I'm like, I don't want the Scientologists to come after me, but like, they don't care, so it's fine.
Right.
What I think is interesting about Scientology versus something like Mormonism is I feel like the end game is a little bit different. So like Scientology is very much about money, in my opinion. So that's why Scientologists, so many famous people are Scientologists. Mm-hmm. So many wealthy people are Scientologists. L. Ron Hubbard, who founded the Church of Scientology, was a like science fiction novelist.
Right.
That's literally what he did. And then he discovered some people like actually buy this shit. Like they actually think it's like real. And like what started out as selling books turned into this whole empire of millions of dollars. And not to mention millions of dollars, but also a billion-year contract that you sign to become a member of the Scientology church organization. That's bananas.
It is bananas.
We're not signing any contract, which, by the way, not binding, but that's a story for another time. Yeah. But something else about the Church of Scientology that absolutely makes them a cult is when you try to leave.
Yes.
Very, very difficult to leave the Church of Scientology. And I'm so interested in Scientology, and I've watched a lot of shows, listened to a lot of podcasts. I'm a big fan of Leah Remini, who's from King of Queens.
Yes, and she had that whole show about it.
She had a great show. And so one of the, basically her best friend, who actually just passed away about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, sad.
Mike Rinder was like number 2 for Church of Scientology. So it's David Miscavige is the main guy. And then he was like his number 2, his right-hand man. And he perpetrated all these horrible things while being a member of the Church of Scientology. And then he left. And the church literally bought the house across the street from him and went through his trash and followed him every day and put cameras in birdhouses to watch his house all the time. Just some like really, really wild shit.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Why? Like, at least when you leave, like, the Mormon church or whatever, they may shun you, but they're not digging through your trash and like trying to like, blacklist you from being able to do anything ever again. And like, God bless him. It's like he never got to speak to his children again because they remained members of the Church of Scientology. So like he never got to like restore that relationship. But I definitely think that is something that is an interesting thing to think about. Like Scientology, it's money. That's what they're more interested. Mormons or Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I don't know. I feel like it's more like control or...
Yeah. And this is what makes it so hard to define cults like so wholeheartedly, because there are so many different factors. And this is why like some scholars say, well, religions are cults, the end. And it's like, yes, but no.
Yeah.
But there's no hard definitions.
Yeah.
Like it can be Like usually there's a charismatic leader. Sometimes it's exploitation of like finances. Sometimes it's just control.
Right.
Sometimes it's like sexual exploitation.
Yep.
Sometimes it's like the whole apocalyptic doomsday thing.
Yep.
Like think Jim Jones, you know, that kind of stuff. Like there's so many different aspects to it. And it's just like, it's almost like it reminds me of the Supreme Court when they're talking about pornography and they're like, I can't define
but
pornography.
I know when I see it.
Yes. And you're like, I just get the vibe. This is a cult, the end.
Absolutely.
Like,
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like kind of getting into, you know, like what is it that draws these people? So you think like, I don't think these leaders are charismatic at all. And I don't, you know, they're shitty people. I could lock them in a closet and never see them again and be fine. So while I don't disagree with that, I think that people that tend to end up in cults are people who are like looking for something in their lives. They're missing something. They're missing some part of themselves. It's often something that draws people to religion too, but
which is how they can be so conflated.
Yes. And people who are looking for something, who are looking for some sort of purpose or family or whatever it is, they are very easily manipulated. So are you familiar with the NXIVM cult?
I've heard you talk about it before.
Okay.
But I can't remember which one it is.
God, so there's a great documentary on Max about the NXIVM cult. I can't remember what it's called, but check it out. It's so fascinating. So they have a very charismatic leader. Keith Raniere is his name. He's in jail. He will be in prison for the rest of his life, which is kind of a unique thing to happen to a cult leader. But basically for all the stuff that he, you know, perpetrated against these people. So he, it was very much a sexual exploitation type of cult. But similarly, it started out as like a self-help thing.
Okay.
So they would like attend these conferences and they would earn these cords. And so it started out as this really good thing. But people who were famous ended up in it. One of them was, I can't think of her name right now, but she was in the show Smallville about Superman.
Oh, okay.
And she also ended up getting Allison something. I can't think of it right now, but she ended up getting convicted too for her role in all of it. But they would like brand their members, and it was very like there was a dominatrix type person and then like a sub person that would like, they would tell them like, you can only eat this many calories today. You can only do this. You can only do that. So in the documentary, one of the guys is a filmmaker who's gotten out of the cult, and they're like literally standing in their bedroom at one point. He and his wife are both in it. And they're talking about how she like slept on a dog bed on the floor.
Yes. Okay. I remember you telling me about this, but I, for some reason, was thinking this was the Twin Flames.
No, but oh God, that one is so interesting too.
And but yeah, she like, didn't she like sleep on towels on the floor? And she like had a degree and was
and they were
a crazy smart person.
Yes. And so they're telling this story in their bedroom and they're kind of laughing about it. And then suddenly the husband starts crying. And he's like, you know, we're not stupid people. And we're not stupid. I'm not an evil person. But like, I made my wife sleep on the floor, like on a dog bed.
Yeah.
You know, so that was very like enlightening to me. If he's like, you know, when you're just looking for something and you think you're being a part of something great. And then, you know, at what point are you like, oh no, like this is
like, not good.
Right. Yeah. But when you're with this like leader who is so like, oh, he's so great. And he, you know, brings all these people in and it's so like focused on self-help. Like you could sort of understand where the line started to blur for him.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, and it's very much like how abusers act.
Absolutely.
They come across as like so charming at first and they win you over. And
True
then
sociopaths.
Yes. And then they're like, oh, well, you should hang out with me more. I don't like the way that like your sister talks to you. And then you cut them off. And then they're like, oh, well, you know, your friends are doubting. And then so you cut them off. And then they like will start to hit you. And then they will start to manipulate you. And then next thing you know, you're like, oh no, I'm
isolated from every single person in my life.
And now there's no one who can help me. And
because you're easier to manipulate that way.
Exactly. And it's the same exact thing. So with that, in a world full of Haylies and Libbys, would there be cults?
No. I feel great emphatically saying absolutely not. There would not be. And the reason I say that is because I do not think that we are manipulative people in that sense.
I agree.
I don't have the desire to control people or make people conform to my, beliefs or whatever. So I am not going to spend time like trying to do that to people. I can't imagine ever telling someone like, cut somebody in your life off. And I think that is such a characteristic of it. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes that's warranted, sometimes that is warranted in your life.
Yes.
But when it starts to be like, well, I don't like the way your sister treats you. I don't like the way your spouse treats you. I don't like, when it's getting to be every person in your life. And those tend to be the people in cults that are saying, their mom's like, hey, this is kind of odd. I think you might be in a bad situation. The second they start chirping about that kind of stuff, then it's, well, you need to cut that person out of your life. So I don't think either of us are manipulative people in that sense or feel the need to control people. So no, I don't think there would be cults in an awful world.
I agree. My only concern is that we're an entire species of Haylies and Libbys. Mm-hmm. And some of us, I'm sure genetically will be sociopaths. That is just like the hard part of it. So it's like, I could see something getting out of control. And here is my reasoning as to why, is because I think that once you just kind of, if you have those genetic traits, it's hard to not let that spiral.
Yeah.
And I think about, we've already decided, yes, there would be some types of religion, which can turn into that. And I also think about the fact that I, in college, was in Greek life. And I am in no way saying that Greek life is a cult. I was in a sorority. I loved it.
But it's a group of people with a common, goal in mind.
And you have to follow these rules to be part of it. And you have to do these things. And there are there are religious aspects to it. You don't have to be religious to be involved.
Right.
But then also there are things like initiation and things like that I will say when I walked in, I was like, oh no.
This is a cult.
Am I in a cult? And I kind of just went with it. I was like, well, too late now, kind of a thing. And I'm kind of like, if it was fun enough,
then I'd be involved.
Then maybe I could get into it. But then at that point, it's like, there's no negative connotation.
Exactly.
It's just an organization.
Yes, that's what I was thinking, is like, there's no harm in it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I think that harm almost has to inherently be implied in a cult. There's harm to your life. There's harm to other people. There's whatever. There's some sort of negative thing that comes from being involved in this group.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And I just think that I would hope that all the Haylies and Libbys the ones who have those genes that make them a sociopath or a narcissist or whatever, that the others in their lives would check them.
Yeah.
First of all, and be like, this is too far. You're getting crazy.
Yeah.
And that the rest of us would be like, oh, we're not doing that.
Right.
I don't think that you and I are people who could be controlled.
No.
I think there's a lot of people in my life who have been like, damn it. I wish she would listen to me for once.
Yes.
I'm just so bullheaded that
which is so funny.
Hard no.
Because when you're talking about being in a sorority, I was not a member of Greek life in college. And I'm like, I don't like being told what to do. I don't want to be told what to do. I don't want to be told what to wear. I don't want to be told how to spend my time. I'm not into any of that. Even if it's for 4 years.
Yeah.
I don't want it.
Which is funny because I was like, yay, because this is fun stuff.
Yes.
And I don't really mind being told what to do if it's something that I was already going to do, something that's fun and something that I'm going to enjoy and things like that. Then I don't really mind.
Yeah.
But if it's something that I don't want to do, then you have no right to tell me.
And to be fair, your sorority was never telling you you need to, believe in this, doomsday is coming and we're going to jump on Halley's Comet and we're going to ride it out of here. And, they're not.
Right. Because then I would have been like, you're insane.
This is getting weird.
Not doing that.
Yeah.
it was more like, hey, we're gonna like have an event at the B-Dubs and raise money for charity. And I was like, oh, how fun.
Anything too that's like philanthropic like that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like also separates, because here's the thing that drives me crazy about specifically cults, or what I think are cults that have been recognized as religions. Mm-hmm. They have 501c3 status.
Yes.
Meaning they don't have to pay taxes on their income, which is insane. Because if you check out, you know, like specifically the Church of Scientology, don't hunt me down, guys. I don't, whatever. But the books and the stuff that they make you get to, because there's like different levels of Scientology, right?
Right.
And then you have to reach the point of being what they call clear, going clear. But you have to read these books and take these classes. It's thousands upon thousands of dollars a year.
Yeah.
I mean, it is an absurd amount of money, and it's going straight to the people who control it.
Yeah.
Whereas in, you know, what I consider to be a real religion, you know, if they're collecting like a tithe or something like that on Sunday, that's going to their programs to help keep the church running,
right?
You know, whatever.
Or to like members who who are in the hospital,
right?
Or
exactly.
You know, something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't get the sense that the funds that you're giving to the church are being misappropriated.
Yes,
you know what I mean.
It's like those Christian churches though in the South where they're like coming down from the ceiling.
Yes.
And
it's a show. It's a production.
Yes, it's an entire production. And they like all drive like Mercedes and live in giant mansions. And I'm like, okay,
back
then
to being a cult.
Yeah, you're not a church. Right. You're a cult.
Yeah.
The end.
You are, yeah, exactly. So I just want to talk about some of my favorite cults.
Yeah,
because I just think it's fun. And I think there's like some interesting observations to be made. But Heaven's Gate. Are you familiar with Heaven's Gate?
I don't think I am.
Okay, so that's the doomsday one that they were gonna hitch a ride on the comet and get out of here. That was one that ended in all of them dying because, you know, it's gonna be fine. You're gonna do this and you're gonna wake up and you're gonna
ascend.
Yes, exactly. Which is very much how the not the twin flames, but what's the one? Man, maybe you didn't watch this HBO documentary either, where the lady was like Mother God.
Yes. Okay. I did watch that one. Yes. And she had all the silver.
Colloidal silver, which obviously made her very sick. And then eventually, like, she died.
And then they just, like, drove her dead body around.
Yeah, for, like, a while.
Way too long.
That's spooky.
Yeah. That would never happen in an awful world.
Yeah. So that's an interesting one. Another is the Branch Davidians, which were the cult that was in Waco, Texas, that caused the wacko in Waco, which you're like looking at the sky like you don't know what happened in Waco, Texas.
I'm like, this sounds familiar, but I'm trying to place
oh my God, that's
what it is.
So funny to me because this was such a big deal when it happened. And the reason it was such a big deal when it happened is because the United States government was very involved in what was happening. So the Branch Davidians, David Koresh was their leader. He believed that he was like the second coming of Christ. So that's where the Davidians part comes from. Anyway, the government only cared because the Branch Davidians started like stockpiling guns. And so ATF got involved and essentially had this like several day standoff with the Branch Davidians where several ATF officers were killed, as were Branch Davidians. There was a whole bunch of other stuff going on, but that was really like something that very much led up to the bombings in Oklahoma City and just some other things that happened later that I think it's very interesting, the lasting impact that the Branch Davidians had on people. That was like mid-90s. I think it was like 1995 maybe that happened, or maybe 93, somewhere in there. I also wrote down Scientology, which we already talked about. And then you mentioned earlier Jim Jones, Jonestown, which I wrote down, you know, my connection to Jim Jones because if I don't say this, I swear my boyfriend will never let me live it down because he likes to remind me almost weekly that I went to the same college that Jim Jones went to. So I went to Butler University. Jim Jones technically went to Butler, but it wasn't Butler at the time. And so anytime I talk about anything like Butler related. I'm like, Butler basketball. And he's like, yeah, but my school. And then I'm like, yeah, but my school's better. And he's like, oh, really? You have literally one of the largest mass murderers as a member of your like alumni. Like, you are just...
The amount of times that you'll be like, yeah, I went to Butler, and someone's like, oh, the cult leader. And I'm like, oh my God, why is that all that people know?
Let it go. But obviously, so Jim Jones was, spent a lot of time here in Indianapolis. I think he was from somewhere in Indiana, but everything that happened there, again, another cult that ended in everybody dying.
Yeah. Like a lot, like hundreds.
Like 800 or something insane.
Why? I think it was like the largest.
Yeah.
Mass murder
Yes.
situation.
Yep, it is in United States history, as far as I know. So I think it's interesting, though, that like pretty much all those cults that I just talked about, they're all over and done with, and they all happened more like the 60s, 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
Still happens today, obviously. We still see the HBO documentaries,
well,
whatever.
Like the Mother God one was not that long ago.
Not that long ago. But I think what's interesting that separates these is that such a small group of people. That's maybe, at its best, 30 people. I don't know, 25, 30 people. Not that many. Whereas you talk about Jonestown, that was a whole functioning community.
Yeah.
That literally up and left their lives in the United States to move to an island in the middle of nowhere and start a whole new community. So just like thinking about the level of power that these leaders have over people. And I think I just wrote down, this is my idea. I have no idea if there's anything to this or not. But that I think that it's gone down a lot because there's significantly less, like there was like satanic panic in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, that was causing like religions to very much like fracture. And then, other people being like, well, that's a cult because you're teaching this and that's not what we teach or whatever. But also like war was happening. That's going to cause a lot of like things. Counterculture really became a thing like in the 70s, like after, Summer of Love and all of that. So I just think that's interesting that they're like just not quite the same as they are today. And I wonder also if some of that is attributed to the fact that we have like social media and like communication with people.
I just think they're getting smarter about how they do things because they're definitely still very prevalent. But I think that they're much more under the guise of religions and things like that. And they can be more vocal in a way to say like, no, we're not. We're just these things, and be like very openly, look, we're very normal. We're very normal. Think the Mormon church. There's like that whole group of, Utah women who are like moms and blonde. And they're like, no, you don't have to wear that weird special underwear. And I can wear these things and still be modest. And then you're like, you literally can't, like, okay. But, I think they're just getting smarter in all these ways. And have you seen, there's this one woman on TikTok who I am obsessed with right now. I think her name is like Daniela, and her like handle is Knitting Cult Lady.
No.
Okay. So she has this new book. It's called Uncultured, and like cult is in a different color than the rest of it. And she was born into a cult.
Okay.
I think it was like the Children of God.
Oh, yeah.
And
that's an interesting one.
Yeah. So she was born into this cult.
Damn.
And she left. But her mom, I think her mom left as well, but her mom had her when she was like 15. But she left this cult, and then she went into the military. And so then she talks about how the U.S. military is also a cult. But she's saying in this book, the book is a memoir, and I think you should read it. And I sent it to Ty yesterday and said that we should all read it.
Yeah.
Because the reviews are saying it's like The Glass Castle.
Oh my God. And you know how much I love that book.
I know. Every time we bring it up, you're like, I love
that book. And I love to say the same things that I love about it. Okay, I'm going to have to read this.
Yes, I will send you a video from her. But she talks about like all the key things that like make you a cult, like being isolated from society and all of these things. And she's like, I grew up on this commune, and like my mom didn't really raise me. She's like, because people are like, well, how do you feel being raised by a 15-year-old? And she's like, well, wasn't really raised by her. I saw her like one day a week. Really.
And also Children of God was very much a sexually exploitive cult. So I'm guessing that's probably, unfortunately, how she got here.
Yeah.
Earthside. That's Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think too, like if you grew up on a commune like that and you leave and you're like, this is not a good situation, right? Like I need to get out. Are you just subbing, sort of one cult for the other? You join the military. Is that something that you're always chasing in your life, that you feel like you need to be part of this community? And
yeah, probably.
Yeah. And I guess also like we talked about how cults have negative connotations, but sometimes cults that are not led by charismatic leaders, like a cult of personality or, something like that, is not always a negative thing.
Yeah.
Like the United States military is not out to exploit you out of your money or your anything like that, or sexually exploit you. But it's a group of people living together, isolated from other people, who have a common goal in mind.
I mean, I don't want to as an American citizen, I don't really want to hate on our military because a lot of them are good people and do good work. But there are bad people in there who there is a lot of sexual exploit that goes on in the military. There
absolutely is.
And a lot towards women in particular, yes. And a lot towards gay people who are in the military. I mean, don't say gay.
Right.
Was not that long ago. What was it called? The ask but don't tell.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, yes. Kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And that wasn't that long ago. So I understand how certain people, I think it works out for them and it's not a negative experience. And a lot of people do go in because they're trying to do good things, but also it's kind of exploitive in the way that it tries to recruit
young people,
underprivileged people, young people. And they're like, well, we'll give you an education.
Yeah.
But, so
yeah,
it's very hit or miss, especially because it's something where it's like, well, the country does need protected.
Right.
People need protection.
It makes you wonder if it's symptomatic of these large groups of people that have to be together like that.
Yes.
Or if it's designed to be that way. Right. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't necessarily think the military sought out to be an organization like that, but I can see where you get this many people together and they're all living together. Things are going to happen. They're just naturally going to transpire.
Yeah.
Whether that's the goal or not.
Right.
I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
It is fascinating that they still exist. I think that they're much smaller in number. And I do think that people are starting to get wiser to some extent, but there are always going to be naive people in the world.
Yeah.
That are searching for something. And there are always going to be people in the world that are wanting to take advantage of that. I hope in an awful world that those people, because let's be clear, sociopaths, they're people too.
Yeah.
They are, and not all sociopaths are evil, horrible people.
No. A lot of them work towards it. They have to check themselves
every day.
And,
right. Just being a sociopath is basically that you kind of have a hard time relating to other humans and
you lack empathy and things like that.
And you're just kind of mimicking what you see around you. That doesn't mean that you're going to grow up to be a cult leader or that you're going to grow up to be this terrible person.
Right.
But yes, I think you're right that there will be sociopaths in an awful world. But I think it's just about kind of what you do with that.
Yeah.
That differentiates you from, and I don't know how naive the people of an awful world are going to be.
That is where I think that we wouldn't have them is because you and I are not very naive. We're very much
realists.
Yes, we want to question things.
Yeah.
We want to make our own decisions. We're going to look into things. And every single person I have ever met has told me that I am so stubborn. It is what people love and hate about me. And I just think that I can only be pushed so far before I'm going to dig my heels in.
Right.
And be like, absolutely not.
This is weird. What are we doing?
Absolutely. And so I think that as a whole, people who we would be like, yay, fun organizations. How exciting.
Right.
And then one person who happened to be a sociopath or something would be like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And everyone would be like, oh, no.
We're not.
we actually just wanted to do this for fun.
Yeah.
We're not going to like sleep in dog
out.
beds and like
Right.
kill ourselves.
Right.
You know, like that. That's
No. Yeah.
While I think we're charismatic enough to be cult leaders, I think we're nice enough not to be.
Yes. I don't think that I'm like looking to like, I don't want followers, honestly.
No.
I don't want to be that kind of leader. You know what I mean?
Yes. Like, honestly, at this point, you know, I mean, we grew up in the age of social media. We were like the first generations to really have that while we were young.
Yeah.
You know, kind of a thing. And so we kind of grew up being like, we want a following. We want a following. How many followers can you have? And now that I'm in my 30s, I am just like,
I don't care.
I care about like 7 people in the whole world and their opinions. And outside of that, I don't care.
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, we're frequently talking about how like overwhelmed we are by that kind of stuff, right?
Yes.
Like we were just discussing the other day, like people everywhere you go are like taking TikTok videos or, you know, their whole Instagram is just like, you know, this front, honestly, of
and I'm
fake
sorry.
content.
We're not all models.
No, we're not.
And that's okay. I'm not a model.
No,
and I'm okay with that.
I am surely not a model. And I'm also okay with that because, you know, I don't have the energy for that kind of thing.
No.
I just kind of want to like do my life and exist.
Yeah.
And if I share a photo or something, it's because I want to share with my friends what I'm doing and not because I'm trying to collect other people's social capital.
Exactly.
Which I think is the difference between us and that's not to say that people who are like, you know, social media influencers are like bad people or are collecting people as social capital. But I think that there's a danger in our society being sort of so focused on that and that every person has this desire to do that. But I suspect there are more people in the world like us. But in a world exclusively full of Haylies and Libbys, there aren't.
Right.
So, you know, it's just us. We don't have to suspect that there are more people in the world like this. The whole world is us.
Exactly.
And so we don't really care about that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. So this was a good conversation. This was so fun. I love this topic.
I do too.
Honestly could probably talk for 15 hours about this topic. There is so much to do with cults and, you know, all the things about them. And I think as a society, we're still learning a lot about them.
Yes.
Clearly, we have a hard time defining really what they are and you know, saying who's what and, you know, how do you tell the difference between a religion and a cult? And clearly, even the United States government can't figure that out. So that's a fascinating facet of cults.
Yes.
But yeah.
Now, for our listeners, there's one more thing I want to say about cults.
Okay,
because,
lay it on me.
Again, we wouldn't have this in a world full of Haylies and Libbys, but in the world we currently live in, please watch out because cults are rebranding.
Oh.
Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
Now, because of the negative connotations of the word cult, they have rebranded.
Interesting.
So if someone approaches you to be in a new religious movement,
no.
The answer is no. It is a cult.
That's just so weird because even just like without you telling me that, I would be like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
That's
or
weird.
If they say NRM.
Yeah.
Because that's what that stands for.
Interesting.
But they are rebranding. They're NRMs. They're a new religious movement. You know, that's what they are. That is a cult.
Yeah.
Please stay clear.
I mean, also, I would say be wary of, speaking of, you know, acronyms, MLMs. Okay.
Yes.
Because a lot of those.
Hey, girly.
Yes.
Hey,
those
girl
are
boss.
very, very culty.
Yes.
If you haven't watched the LuLaRoe documentary on Amazon.
Oh, yeah.
Check it out. It's fascinating. And that basically, you know, selling these like fun print leggings turned into a whole disaster of a thing, and that it's financially, exploitive to the people who are involved in it. So check that out. That's another thing to be wary of. These like health movements, you know,
like the Way Down.
Yes, the way. Oh my God, is that a cult?
What is that called? Like, what was the church called? Because the Way Down is the documentary.
Because I think that was the name of the book. Maybe.
I think you're right.
You know, I can't remember what
I can't
the religion was called.
And she had that big hair.
Yeah, but they were Christian.
Yes.
You know, so teachings of the Christian church that were manipulated a lot and blown out of proportion.
Which, that's another big thing with cults is like, because it was Christian, but it was very focused on like your weight and like losing weight for Jesus, which makes no sense. But a lot of them are about like controlling your bodies and things like that.
Yes.
So if you are at church and they're like, hey, fatty,
turn around and walk out of that church,
like
because
get out.
I have been a Christian my whole life, and I know that something that people always say is that you were made in God's image, and so you are perfect the way you are.
Right.
God loves you as you are.
Right.
So if anybody's telling you something different, that's weird.
Yes.
Call your dad, as they say on My Favorite Murder. Call your dad. You're in a cult.
Exactly.
Okay. You need to pick up the phone and let him know. I need out of here. And also, like, I know we've said this, but like, just be wary of people like trying to manipulate who you have in your life. That's, I think, just good advice in general. You know, pre-show, we were kind of talking about, you know, some things, and I'm not gonna, you know, get into too much detail about it, but you know, people that want to separate you from other people or get you away from your friends and family, be wary of that. Be wary of that in friendships. Be wary of that in romantic relationships, because that's just a manipulative personality.
Yes.
And you just have to be very careful about that.
Yes.
Because if those people are successful, I just worry about you. You're not going to have a super happy life if you're isolated from all your friends and family. But you're isolated from your friends and family because you're easier to control that way.
Exactly.
And so, you know, keep that in mind.
But remember, cutting people off in toxic relationships is okay, but it has to be your choice.
Yep.
Don't let anyone make that choice for you.
Or tell you what to do.
Exactly. And please know that cults are closer than you think. I have a family member whose family member was in one of the cults that was mentioned today and died.
Yeah.
They were a very higher up person. They died in this cult. And that is not something that little old me from Indiana and all the people I know and love, I would have never expected to know somebody who was in a cult.
Right. And
especially someone who was high up in a cult who died. And I didn't know this person, but like I said, a family member of a family member, you know, situation. It's closer than you think.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. And I think a lot of people think, well, that'll never happen to me.
Right.
But it could.
And yeah. And if you're not aware, then you don't see the signs. And that's exactly how it happens to you.
Just protect yourself, you know, just try not. If you're looking for something in your life, that's fine. That's a great way to be looking for connections with other people or purpose but there's a lot of healthier ways to go about that than to be wary of people want to exploit that and manipulate that. So you just have to like do your research and look into it and talk to people around you about it and get a vibe.
Yeah.
I don't know how to give you the spidey senses that Haylie and I have for like, woo, this is a cult.
Yeah.
But, you know,
just be wary. Like you can trust people.
Yeah.
But be wary. But, you know, and just try to like live your life like you're in an awful world.
True. Because,
you know?
And if you
be suspicious.
You know, yeah. No, I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious. Yeah. So, that's the episode about cults. I feel like we're like cult therapists. Like we need to like connect with people that like, please let us help you. We just like gave our listeners like 20 minutes of advice of like, okay, do not be bamboozled by these people. I know you think it can't happen to you. I was bamboozled. Listen to our episode about something, timekeeping, it was calendars. I probably tell the story in calendars of how I was once easily bamboozled by a quote unquote Mayan shaman.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like I don't consider myself to be a stupid person, and I was bamboozled by that person out of money. So, you know, funny story in retrospect, but it can happen to you.
In that situation, always be a Haylie. Be very wary. Say no all the time. Do not talk to strangers.
Yes.
Just don't.
Yeah.
You know?
In an awful world, you wouldn't have to worry about these things. But unfortunately, we live in this world.
Which is awful in a different way.
Yeah.
You know what
I'm saying? Not in the same way, I'll tell you that. Not in the same way at all. So thanks for listening to season 2, episode 1.
Yes.
Woo. We have some really cool, fun topics coming up this season that I'm super excited to talk about.
We're so excited.
My God, some great topics. As a reminder, I know we hit you up for this in the beginning. I'm gonna come at you again. Don't accuse me of being like a snake oil salesman, because I'm not trying to manipulate you. But if you feel so inclined to hop onto our patreon.com/an awful world podcast, remember AWFHAL. Please check us out there. Please look at the tiers. Help support us, keep the podcast going. Remember, stickers, shout outs, handwritten notes. There's all kinds of fun things that you can kind of get involved with the podcast there. But yeah, thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you. Also check out our Instagram and our Facebook. And please stick around.
Yeah, listen to us, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast, hit us up with a like, subscribe to us, and we'll see you next time in this horribly awful world.
I hope your day is just simply
awful.
Wow.